Well, hello there, my spooky friends. How are you doing? I hope you had a great and wonderful day and that you are getting ready to go to sleep and have a very restful night. I'm in my pajamas, getting ready for bed. Time to take off the makeup, right? So, I have prepared for you some great ghost stories and maybe a little bit of dreams, or is it premonitions? I don't know. Anyway, we have a whole lot of spooky time. So I'm going to tell you these little stories, hopefully to make you sleepy. I don't know. Maybe you'll be bored. Who knows? But in any case, I hope you have a wonderful night's rest. And oh my goodness, this is going to take a minute. But it is definitely time for lights out and have a beautiful sleep. If you like these stories, hit the thumbs up. Scully also says good night. And now, let's get spooky. The sound of rain against the window had always been soothing to Dr. Eleanor Reed. Tonight, however, as she sat alone in her office, the steady patter felt more like a warning. The university research building was nearly empty at this hour, just after 10 p.m. on a Friday. Eleanor rubbed her eyes, the strain of staring at her computer screen for hours finally taking its toll. Her research on memory formation had consumed her life for the past 3 years, especially since receiving the prestigious grant that funded her current project. But lately, something else had been distracting her. The incidents had started small, files rearranged on her desk, the temperature in her office dropping suddenly, the distinct feeling of being watched when she worked late. She had dismissed these as the products of an overworked mind until 2 weeks ago when she had heard the voice. She had been alone when a voice, soft, female, and somehow familiar, had whispered her name, Eleanor. Just once, clear as day, from the empty corner of her office. She had spent 20 minutes searching for a logical explanation, but found nothing. Eventually, she had packed up and left, telling herself it was just fatigue. But it had happened again and again, always when she was alone, always the same voice, sometimes just her name, sometimes fragments of sentences she couldn't quite make out, and always accompanied by the sudden, inexplicable cold. Tonight, Eleanor decided she'd had enough. She was a scientist, after all. If something unusual was happening, she would investigate it methodically. She opened her desk drawer and removed a small digital recorder, pressed record, and spoke clearly. This is Dr. Eleanor Reed. I am attempting to document the unusual auditory phenomenon I've been experiencing. If there is something or someone in this room that has been trying to communicate with me, I am listening now. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the rain and the soft hum of her computer. After 5 minutes of nothing, she reached to turn off the recorder. Eleanor, remember. The voice came from directly behind her. Eleanor froze, her hand covering over the recorder. The temperature in the room plummeted, her breath suddenly visible in the air. Remember what? She whispered, not turning around. The accident. Eleanor's blood ran cold. The accident, 3 years ago. The reason she'd thrown herself into research with such determination. The reason for the scar that ran from her right temple down to her jaw. Who are you? She asked, her voice trembling. No response came. The cold lingered for another minute, then gradually dissipated. With shaking hands, she stopped the recording and played it back. Her own voice came through clearly, as did the long silence that followed. But where the other voice should have been, there was only static. She packed up quickly after that. As she gathered her things, her eyes fell on a framed photograph on her desk. Herself and a young woman with similar features. Her sister, Megan, killed in the same car accident that had left Eleanor with a traumatic brain injury and a significant memory loss around the event itself. The doctors had told her this was normal, that the mind often protected itself by blocking traumatic memories. But now she wondered if there was something specific she was supposed to remember. The following Monday, Eleanor arrived at work with a plan. She'd spent the weekend researching electromagnetic fields and other phenomena that could potentially explain what she'd experienced. She'd also purchased several pieces of equipment: an EMF detector, a more sophisticated audio recorder, and a small infrared camera. She set everything up in her office. By evening, she was beginning to think Friday's incident had been a hallucination. She stayed late again, hoping the voice would return. At 9:43 p.m., her phone rang. It was Dr. Kaplan, her neurologist. "Eleanor, I've been reviewing your latest scans, and there's something I'd like to discuss. Are you free tomorrow morning?" After hanging up, Eleanor tried to return to her work, but found herself unable to focus. She was about to pack up when her computer screen flickered. The document she'd been working on, replaced by a blank text file. As she watched, text began to appear, one letter at a time. The passenger. Eleanor stared at the screen. She hadn't touched the keyboard. The EMF detector was spiking wildly. The temperature was dropping again. "What passenger?" she asked aloud. More text appeared. "You weren't alone." A memory flashed in Eleanor's mind, fragments of the accident. The rain-slicked road, the headlights of the oncoming car, and Megan screaming. But there was something else, something she'd forgotten. There had been someone else in the car with them. "Who was with us?" she whispered. The text cursor blinked before new words formed. "Look in the mirror." Eleanor's office had no mirror, but as she turned to look around, her gaze fell on her darkened computer screen, which now reflected her face like a black mirror. Except it wasn't just her face. Standing behind her, visible only in the reflection, was a young woman with a terrible wound across her chest. Megan. Eleanor gasped, spinning around, but there was no one there. When she looked back at the screen, the reflection showed only her face. The text file was gone, her original document back in place. With trembling hands, she checked the infrared camera's footage. To her shock, it showed her sitting at her desk, then suddenly standing and turning around, apparently speaking to an empty room. There was no sign of the computer screen changing, no indication of another presence. The next morning, Eleanor met with Dr. Kaplan. The neurologist showed her the recent scans of her brain, pointing out unusual activity in the hippocampus and amygdala, areas associated with memory. "These patterns suggest your brain is trying to access memories that were affected by your injury," Dr. Kaplan explained. "Could this cause hallucinations?" Eleanor asked carefully. She hesitated, then told him everything: the voice, the cold spots, the message on her computer. "The brain is remarkably complex," he said when she had finished. "What you're describing could be explained by your injury, but I've never seen anyone with such specific, coherent experiences. Most hallucinations are fragmented, disjointed. Yours seem to tell a consistent story." "You mentioned a passenger. Was there someone else in the car with Megan and me?" Dr. Kaplan frowned. "Not according to the accident report, just the two of you." That night, Eleanor returned to her office with a small mirror. She worked until the building emptied out, then sat quietly, waiting. Hours passed with nothing unusual occurring. As she was packing up to leave, her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Check the files. After a moment's hesitation, she turned to her computer and opened her personal folder of photos from before the accident. And then she saw it. A photo from a camping trip 3 months before the accident. Eleanor and Megan were in the foreground, but there was someone else with them. A young man with his arm around Megan's waist. Eleanor stared at his face, feeling a strange sense of recognition mixed with confusion. Who was he? Why couldn't she remember him? She checked more photos. He appeared in several, always with Megan, sometimes with Eleanor too. In one, he and Megan were kissing. Clearly, he had been Megan's boyfriend, but Eleanor had no memory of him whatsoever. With growing unease, she opened her mail and searched for messages from around that time. There were several that mentioned someone named David, plans for dinners, movies, the camping trip. In one email, Megan had written, "David's so excited about the road trip next month. He says he has something important to ask me while we're there." The road trip. The one that had ended with the accident. Eleanor searched for news articles about the accident. She found several, all describing the tragic collision that had killed Megan Reed and left her sister Eleanor with serious injuries. None mentioned a third person in the car. The temperature in the office suddenly dropped. Eleanor's breath fogged in the air as she spun around. Her eyes fell on the mirror she'd placed on her desk. In its reflection, she could see herself, but also faintly another figure standing behind her. Not Megan this time, but a young man. The same one from the photos. "David?" she whispered. The reflection's lips moved, but no sound came out. Eleanor grabbed her phone and opened the camera app, switching to video mode. She pointed it at the mirror. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Were you in the car with us?" In the phone screen, she saw David nod. His lips moved again, and this time, faintly, she heard, "The passenger." "You were the passenger," Eleanor repeated. "But why doesn't anyone remember you? Why don't I remember you?" David's image flickered. "Erased me." "Who erased you? How?" Eleanor demanded, but the image was fading. When she played back the video, it showed only her talking to an empty room. Eleanor decided to visit her mother. They weren't close. The accident had driven a wedge between them. But if anyone would remember David, it would be her mother. Eleanor took her phone and pulled up one of the photos showing Megan with David. "Mom, do you remember him?" she asked. Her mother stared at the photo. "Where did you get this?" "From my old photos. That's David, right? Megan's boyfriend." Her mother's hands trembled. "Eleanor, we agreed not to talk about him." "So he was real. He existed." "Of course he existed," her mother said, looking troubled. "But after what happened, after what he did—" "What did he do?" Eleanor pressed. "Was he in the car with us during the accident?" Her mother's face paled. "You don't remember?" "I don't remember anything clearly from that night, just fragments." Her mother sighed heavily. "Yes, he was in the car. He was driving." Eleanor felt a chill. "The accident report says I was driving." "That's what we told the police," her mother said quietly. "You were unconscious, Megan was dead, and David. David was gone." "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" He walked away from the crash, Eleanor. The other driver was killed instantly. Megan died on impact. You were trapped in the back seat unconscious, and David, who was barely hurt, looked at what he'd done and he ran. He left you and Megan there to die." Eleanor stared at her mother in shock. "That's not possible. The accident wasn't our fault. The other car crossed the center line." "Is that what you remember?" her mother asked gently. "Eleanor, David was drunk. He swerved into oncoming traffic. The accident was his fault." "But why would you lie to the police?" "I wasn't protecting him," her mother said fiercely. "I was protecting you. I couldn't bear the thought of you waking up and facing charges for a crime you didn't commit. So I told them you were alone with Megan, that the other driver was at fault." "And David? What happened to him?" "I don't know," her mother admitted. "He disappeared." That night, back in her office, Eleanor set up all her equipment again. But this time she also brought something else, a small digital voice recorder that she'd found in a box of Megan's belongings after the accident. She placed it on her desk and pressed play. Megan's voice filled the room. Thesis Notes, Chapter 3, October 10th. Eleanor was about to turn it off when the tone of the recording changed. "Personal note," Megan's voice said. "David's been acting strange lately. Possessive, angry. When I told him I was considering the research position in Chicago, he got so upset, said we had plans, that I couldn't leave. But we never made any definite plans." Eleanor stared at the recorder. This didn't match her mother's story. If Megan had been having doubts about David, why would she have been in a car with him? The temperature in the office began to drop. Eleanor looked up at the mirror and gasped. Both Megan and David were visible in the reflection, standing on either side of her chair. "What really happened that night?" Eleanor asked. In the mirror, Megan's lips moved. "He was taking me somewhere against my will. You tried to stop him." David's reflection shook his head. "She's lying. It was an accident. I loved her." "You were controlling," Megan's voice countered. "When I tried to break up with you, you couldn't accept it." Eleanor closed her eyes, concentrating, trying to remember. Fragments came back to her. Megan crying, David shouting, Eleanor stepping between them. The three of them Eleanor stepping between them. The three of them in the car, David driving erratically, Eleanor in the back seat, begging him to stop. The headlights of the oncoming car, the impact. "You didn't run away," Eleanor said slowly. "You died too." David's image flickered. "Not right away. I was thrown from the car. I crawled back to try to help, but it was too late. Megan was already gone. You were unconscious. I was bleeding internally. I made it about 100 yards into the woods before I collapsed. They didn't find my body for weeks." "But why doesn't anyone remember you were there?" Eleanor asked. "Your mother knew," Megan's voice said softly. "She found my voice recorder. When the police told her they'd found his body near the accident site, she made a choice. She created a story that would protect you and preserve my memory. In her version, there was no David, no conflict, just a tragic accident caused by a drunk driver in the other car." "Why now?" Eleanor finally asked. "Why are you both appearing to me now after 3 years?" "Your research," David's reflection replied. "You're studying memory, how it's formed, how it can be altered or recovered. Your work is getting close to understanding how traumatic memories are stored and accessed. We're part of your most significant traumatic memory. As you get closer to breakthrough in your research, the barriers in your own mind are breaking down." "We need you to remember," Megan added, "fully and completely. so you can move on, so we all can. And my mother? Should I confront her with the truth? She did what she thought was right, Megan said gently. She was protecting you the only way she knew how. The truth doesn't always bring peace, David added, his image beginning to fade. Sometimes understanding is enough. Eleanor watched as both apparitions gradually disappeared from the mirror, leaving only her reflection. She checked her equipment. As expected, none of it had captured anything unusual. No evidence of the conversation she had just had. No proof that Megan and David had been there. Just as there was no proof of what had really happened the night of the accident, beyond her own recovered memories. In the end, Eleanor decided not to confront her mother. What would be gained by forcing her to admit to a deception born of grief and love? Instead, she focused on her research with renewed purpose, understanding now in a deeply personal way how memory could both be fragile and resilient. She still works late, sometimes in her office. Occasionally, she feels a familiar drop in temperature or catches a glimpse of a figure in her peripheral vision. But the voices, they've stopped. Whatever Megan and David needed to communicate has been said, or at least that's what Eleanor tells herself on the nights when she sits alone in her office, listening to the rain against the window, and wondering if there's more to the story, more that she still doesn't remember, more that they haven't told her. Because memory, as her research continues to show, is never as reliable as we want it to be. And some questions, once asked, never fully leave us. The recurring dream started when Olivia Parker was just 7 years old. It always began the same way. She would find herself standing at the edge of a forest she didn't recognize, the trees unnaturally tall and dense. The sky above was a strange purplish gray. In the distance, barely visible through the trees, stood a Victorian mansion with peeling white paint and a distinctive red door. In the dream, Olivia would always walk toward the house, drawn by some inexplicable force. She could never control her movements, could only watch as her small feet carried her forward along a narrow dirt path. As she approached, she would notice details: shutters hanging, a broken second-floor window, wind chimes made of what looked like small bones dangling from the porch ceiling. The most terrifying part came next. As she reached the bottom of the porch steps, the red door would slowly swing open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. From that darkness would emerge a tall, thin figure, more shadow than person, with no discernible features except for two pale blue lights where eyes should be. The figure would extend a hand toward her, and Olivia would hear a voice say, "You'll come home eventually, Olivia. Everyone returns to where they belong." At this point, she would always wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. The first few times it happened, her parents rushed to her room in alarm. They held her, comforted her, assured her it was just a nightmare. But the dream kept returning, once or twice a month, with such consistency that eventually her parents consulted a child psychologist who suggested she keep a dream journal. The journal helped Olivia notice patterns. The dream always came on nights when the moon was full or nearly full. It always featured the same house, the same figure, the same words. And most disturbingly, as the years passed, Olivia got closer and closer to the house in each dream. By the time she was 12, she was climbing the porch steps. At 13, she stood at the threshold, a shadowy figure directly before her. On her 14th birthday, she dreamed she stepped inside the house and the door closed behind her. That was the night she woke up with a small scar on her palm that hadn't been there when she went to bed, a crescent shaped mark that her parents couldn't explain. The pediatrician suggested she might have scratched herself in her sleep, but the mark was too precise, too deliberate. After that, the dream stopped completely. For 20 years, Olivia slept normally, the nightmare becoming nothing more than an unsettling childhood memory. She went to college, graduated with a degree in architecture, landed a job at a prestigious firm in Boston, and generally lived a normal, successful life. The crescent scar remained on her palm, faded but visible, a curiosity she occasionally traced with her finger when deep in thought. Then came the call that changed everything. Olivia was 34 when her phone rang on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The caller ID showed her mother's number. Olivia? Her mother's voice sounded strained. I have some strange news. What is it, Mom? It's about your great Aunt Vivian. She's passed away. Olivia frowned, trying to place the name. Great Aunt Vivian? I don't think I've ever heard of her. No, you wouldn't have. She was estranged from the family, but apparently she never forgot about us. I'm sorry to hear that, Olivia said, unsure why her mother was telling her this. She's left you her house, her mother said abruptly, in her will. Specifically you, not me or your father. A house in the small town called Greystone, about 3 hours west of here. Olivia sat down heavily. That doesn't make any sense. Why would she leave her house to a great niece she never knew? I don't know, her mother admitted. The lawyer sent some paperwork and a key. There's a letter for you as well, but it's sealed. Curiosity piqued. Olivia arranged to visit her parents the following weekend. After dinner, her father brought out a small box containing the items from the lawyer. Olivia opened the box and removed the sealed envelope. She broke the wax seal, dark red with the impression of a crescent moon, and removed a single piece of paper. My dearest Olivia, though we have never met in person, I have known you since the day you were born. The connection between us transcends ordinary family ties. You have been chosen, as I was, as my mother was before me. The house is now yours, as it was always meant to be. The dreams have shown you the way. The mark on your palm is your birthright. When you're ready, come home to Greystone. The red door will open for you, and all will be explained. Until then, I remain your loving great aunt, Vivian Parker. Olivia's hands trembled as she read the letter. The dreams, the mark on her palm. How could Vivian had known about those things? She looked up at her parents, who were watching her with anxious expressions. Did you read this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother shook her head. No, but Olivia, there's something we need to tell you. Her father reached out and took her mother's hands. We should have told you years ago. Told me what? Olivia demanded, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. Her mother took a deep breath. Vivian isn't really your great aunt. She's your grandmother. My mother. Olivia stared at her mother in shock. What? But you always said your parents died before I was born. I thought that would be easier than explaining the truth, her mother said, tears forming in her eyes. My mother abandoned me when I was 5 years old, left me with my father, and disappeared. He told me she'd gone to live in a house that had been in her family for generations, a house she claimed had some kind of power. And now she's left it to me, Olivia said slowly. Why? Why not to you? Her mother shook her head. I don't know. But Olivia, please, don't go there. Sell the house. Forget about Vivian and her cryptic messages. There was always something not right about her. But Olivia couldn't forget. That night, sleeping in her childhood bedroom, the dream returned for the first time in 20 years. The forest, the purple gray sky, the Victorian house with the red door. Only this time, when the shadowy figure appeared, it spoke different words. It's time to come home, Olivia. I've been waiting. She woke up with the certainty that she needed to see the house in Greystone. Despite her parents' objections, she extended her weekend stay and early Monday morning set out for the 3 hour drive to the small town. Greystone turned out to be barely more than a village, a collection of buildings clustered around a main street, surrounded by a dense forest. As Olivia drove through, she noticed people stopping to stare at her car, their expressions unreadable. She followed the GPS directions to the outskirts of town, where the paved road gave way to gravel and then dirt. And then she saw it. Rising from a clearing in the forest was the house from her dreams, the Victorian mansion with peeling white paint and a red door. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as a wave of dizziness washed over her. It was exactly as she had dreamed it, down to the broken second floor window and the bone wind chimes swaying gently in the breeze. Olivia approached the house slowly, following the narrow dirt path that led to porch steps. When she reached the bottom of the porch steps, she hesitated, remembering how, in her dreams, this is when the door would open and the shadowy figure would appear. But the door remained closed. Olivia climbed the steps, the old wood creaking beneath her feet. She stood before the red door, heart pounding, and raised her hand to knock. As she did, she noticed the crescent scar on her palm seemed darker, more pronounced than it had been in years. Before her knuckles could make contact with the wood, the door swung open. There was no shadowy figure, no pale blue lights, no ominous voice, just an empty hallway with faded wallpaper and a dusty wooden floor. Olivia stepped inside cautiously, half expecting the door to slam shut behind her. But it remained open, sunlight spilling into the dim interior. The house smelled of old books, dried herbs, and something else she couldn't quite identify, something ancient and earthy. In the center of what appeared to be a living room stood a round table covered with deep purple cloth. On it sat a large leather-bound book and a letter similar to the one she had received. She opened it with trembling fingers. Olivia, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found your way home at last. The dreams have guided you, as they guided me, as they have guided every other Parker woman for generations. What you must understand is that our family has a gift, or a curse, depending on how you choose to see it. We can glimpse fragments of the future in our dreams. Not just any future, but specifically the moments when our lives will change irrevocably. Your mother rejected this legacy. She feared the dreams, feared the responsibility they represented. But you, Olivia, you were marked from birth. The crescent on your palm is proof. The book on the table contains our family history. Read it. Learn from it. Remember, the future you see is not set in stone. It is a possibility, a warning, a guide. How you respond to these visions determines whether they become reality. Welcome home, granddaughter. With love and hope, Vivian. Olivia reached for the book on the table, running her fingers slowly over its worn leather cover. As she did, the crescent star on her palm began to tingle, then burn. She gasped, pulling her hand back, but not before noticing that the symbol embossed on the book's cover matched her scar exactly. A sudden gust of wind blew through the open door, ruffling the pages of the book, which fell open to a specific page. Olivia leaned forward to read the handwritten text. October 15th, 1891. I dreamed of fire tonight. The town engulfed in flames, people screaming, running. A man with a torch, his face twisted with hatred. I must warn them, though they may not believe me. The entry was signed Margaret Parker. She turned the page. October 20th, 1891. They called me mad, a witch, a harbinger of doom. But when Greystone's mill caught fire last night, started by William Hayes in a drunken rage, they remembered my warning. 7 lives were saved because they heeded my words and kept water barrels ready. Olivia flipped through more pages, reading accounts from different women, all with the last name Parker, all describing prophetic dreams that came true. The most recent entries were in Vivian's handwriting. September 12th, 2025. My time grows short. The dreams show me darkness now, nothing more. But before the visions faded, I saw Olivia one last time. She was standing in this very room, reading this very book. The circle completes itself. Olivia closed the book with hands shaking. The last entry was dated just 2 weeks ago. Vivian had known she was going to die and had prepared everything for Olivia's arrival. She spent the night in what had been Vivian's bedroom, sleeping more soundly than she had in years, and she dreamed, not of the house this time, but of Boston, her apartment building engulfed in flames, people trapped inside. In the dream, she saw the date, October 30th, 2025, just 6 days away. Olivia woke with a start, the dream vivid in her mind. Was this what Vivian had meant? Was this her first true premonition? She spent the day exploring the house, finding journals, books, and records dating back centuries, all documenting the Parker women and their prophetic dreams. By evening, she had made her decision. She called her boss and requested a week of personal leave. Then she called her mother. I'm staying at the house for a while, she told her. There are things I need to understand. Olivia, please, her mother begged. That house, those dreams, they destroyed my childhood. Don't let them take you too. I don't think it works that way, Mom, Olivia said gently. From what I've read, the gift isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to help, to warn, to prepare. Vivian used it to save lives. And it consumed her mother countered. She chose those dreams over her own family. Maybe, Olivia conceded, or maybe she understood something you didn't. Either way, I need to figure this out for myself. After hanging up, Olivia sat at the round table with a blank journal open before her. She wrote down every detail of her dream about the apartment fire. The time, the location, the people she had seen. She made a list of what she could do to prevent it from happening. On October 29th, she returned to Boston and went directly to her apartment building. She spoke to the superintendent about checking the electrical systems, insisted on a fire safety inspection, and warned her neighbors to be vigilant. Some looked at her strangely, but others took her seriously, especially when she pointed out the frayed wiring in the basement that the inspector had missed. October 30th came and went without incident. No fire, no tragedy. Olivia watched the clock tick past midnight with a mixture of relief and confusion. Had she prevented the disaster, or had it been a normal dream after all? The answer came the next morning when she overheard 2 neighbors talking about an electrical fire that had started in the basement, but had been quickly contained because someone had left a fire extinguisher nearby, right where Olivia had placed one, just in case. She returned to the house in Greystone that afternoon. a strange sense of purpose filling her. That night she dreamed again, this time of a car accident on a specific curve of highway, a school bus full of children, a truck driver falling asleep at the wheel. The date, November 5th. Olivia woke and immediately began making calls. Most dismissed her concerns, but one state trooper promised to have a patrol car in the area that day. November 5th passed without incident. The next day's local paper carried a small story about a truck driver who had been pulled over for erratic driving and found to be dangerously fatigued. The location? Exactly where the curve Olivia had dreamed about, at exactly a time a school bus would have been passing. 1 year after inheriting the house, Olivia invited her mother to visit. Catherine Parker arrived with obvious trepidation, standing at the bottom of the porch steps, much as Olivia had done, staring up at the red door with a mixture of fear and resentment. "It hasn't changed at all," she murmured as Olivia welcomed her inside. They sat in the living room at the round table where the family book still lay. Olivia made tea and they talked, really talked, for the first time about the dreams, the gift, and the legacy. "I was afraid," Catherine admitted. "The dreams terrified me as a child. Mother tried to explain, to teach me, but all I could see was a burden I didn't want. When I left, I thought I was escaping. I never dreamed the gift would pass to you." "It's not always easy," Olivia acknowledged, "but it's part of who I am, who we are." Catherine reached across the table and took her daughter's hand, tracing the crescent scar with her thumb. "I'm sorry I kept this from you. I thought I was protecting you." "You were," Olivia said with a smile. "You gave me a normal childhood, a chance to grow up without the weight of this legacy. And when the time was right, the house called me home anyway." That night, Olivia dreamed of her mother standing at the red door again, this time not in fear, but in acceptance. In the dream, Catherine entered the house and climbed the stairs to what had been Vivian's room, her mother's room. When Olivia woke the next morning, she found her mother's bedroom door closed. She knocked softly. "Mom, are you okay?" The door opened to reveal Catherine, her eyes red but clear. "I had a dream last night," she said quietly, "the first in decades." Olivia nodded, understanding. "What did you see?" "Us," Catherine replied. "You and me, in this house, working together, learning from each other, the way it should have been with me and my mother." Olivia smiled and took her mother's hand. The crescent scar in her palm seemed to pulse gently, a reminder of the connection between them, between all the Parker women throughout history. "Then let's get started," she said. "We have a lot of catching up to do." As they descended the stairs together, Olivia glanced out the window at the forest surrounding the house. The trees no longer seemed threatening, the sky above no longer ominous. This place that had haunted her dreams for so long had become something else entirely. Not a house of horrors, but a house of visions. Not a prison, but a gateway. The red door stood open, letting in the morning light. Outside, the balm wind chimes tinkled softly in the breeze, no longer a warning, but a welcome. And somewhere, Olivia thought, Vivian was watching, finally at peace. The premonitions would continue, of course. The dreams would still come, showing glimpses of possible futures, some bright, some dark. The responsibility would sometimes feel overwhelming, but Olivia was no longer afraid. She had found her place, her purpose, her home. And in the end, isn't that what every premonition is really about? Not just seeing what might be, but understanding what already is. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights was giving Dr. Nathan Reed a headache. He'd been working in the university archives for hours, poring over decades old research notes from the psychology department's controversial sleep studies of the 1970s. His dissertation on historical approaches to sleep disorders had led him down this particular rabbit hole, and what he'd found was both fascinating and disturbing. The Somnus Project, as it had been called, was barely mentioned in the university's official records, but Nathan had stumbled across references to it in the personal papers of Dr. Ellen Weiss, a neuropsychologist who had taught at the university for over 30 years before her mysterious resignation in 1978. The project had apparently involved intensive monitoring of subjects with various sleep disorders, particularly those experiencing what the researchers called threshold consciousness phenomena, the strange hallucinations that sometimes occur in the moments between wakefulness and sleep. "You're still here?" The voice made him jump. Marissa Chen, the archive assistant, stood in the doorway, keys in hand. "I'm locking up in 15 minutes. Just finishing up," Nathan said. "These records are incredible. Did you know the university ran sleep experiments in the 70s? They were studying hypnagogic hallucinations. You know, those weird visions people get when they're falling asleep." Marissa's expression changed subtly. "The Somnus Project? I thought those records were restricted." Nathan blinked in surprise. "You know about it?" "My grandmother worked in the psychology department back then," she said. Her voice lowered. "She didn't talk about it much, but I remember her saying they shut it down after what happened to Subject 17. "Subject 17?" Nathan felt a chill. "What happened?" Marissa glanced over her shoulder. "I don't know the details, just that there was an incident, and afterward, they destroyed most of the research. Whatever my grandmother knew, it scared her enough that she left her job." After she left, Nathan turned back to the files with renewed interest. Subject 17. He flipped through the papers, scanning for the number, but found nothing. Most of the documents were mundane: budget requests, equipment inventories, consent forms with the names redacted. As he was about to give up for the night, he noticed a folder he hadn't opened yet, labeled simply Audio Transcripts. Inside were typed transcripts of recorded sessions with various subjects, identified only by number. And there, near the bottom of the stack, was a thin sheaf of papers labeled Subject 17, Sessions 1 through 3. Nathan's pulse quickened as he began to read. Session 1, September 12th, 1977. Subject 17, male, 34, history of sleep paralysis and hypnagogic hallucinations since childhood. Dr. Weiss: "Can you describe what you experience when you're falling asleep?" Subject 17: "It's like I'm still aware of the room around me, but there's something else there too. A presence. I can feel it watching me." Dr. Weiss: "Can you see this presence?" Subject 17: "Not usually. It stays in the corners, in the shadows. But I know it's there. And sometimes, just as I'm drifting off, I catch a glimpse of it moving, like a dark shape sliding along the wall." Dr. Weiss: "And what happens then?" Subject 17: "I try to move, to turn on the light, but I can't. My body feels like it's made of lead, and then the shape gets closer. It comes to the edge of the bed and it leans over me. I can feel its breath on my face, cold like winter air." Dr. Weiss: "What does it want?" Subject 17: "I don't know. but lately it's been speaking. Dr. Weiss, what does it say? Subject 17. It says, it says it's been waiting for me, that we have work to do together. The transcript ended there with a note that the subject had become too agitated to continue. Nathan quickly photographed the remaining pages with his phone, promising himself he'd read them properly once he got home. Once home, he opened the photos of the transcript on his tablet. Session 2, September 19th, 1977. Dr. Weiss, you mentioned last time that the present speaks to you. Has this continued? Subject 17. Yes, every night now, and I think I've started answering it. Dr. Weiss, what do you mean? Subject 17. In that state between sleeping and waking, I can speak to it. We have conversations. It tells me things. Dr. Weiss, what kind of things? Subject 17. Things I couldn't know about people, about events that haven't happened yet. Dr. Weiss, are you saying it predicts the future? Subject 17. Not exactly. It's more like it shows me possibilities, branching paths. It says reality is thin at the threshold of sleep, and that the barriers between what is and what could be become permeable. Dr. Weiss, and do you believe this? Subject 17. I didn't at first, but then it told me about the fire in the chemistry building 3 days before it happened. It knew exactly how it would start, which lab, even the time of day. Dr. Weiss, there was a small fire in Hadley Hall last week. It was contained quickly, and no one was hurt. Subject 17. Because I called in the anonymous tip just like it told me to. It said if I didn't, 3 students would die. The transcript ended abruptly again. Nathan frowned, scrolling to the next session. Session 3, October 3rd, 1977. Dr. Weiss, you missed our last 2 appointments. Subject 17. I've been busy, doing what it asked. Dr. Weiss, what did it ask you to do? Subject 17. I can't tell you that, but it's important. It's showing me things, Dr. Weiss. Things about the nature of reality, about the thin places where worlds touch. Dr. Weiss, I'm concerned about your mental state. These experiences, subject 17, they're real. I've proven it to myself. The fire was just the beginning. Why don't you ask Dr. Chambers about his wife's cancer diagnosis? I left him a note 3 weeks before her first symptom appeared. Dr. Weiss, how would you know about Dr. Chambers' personal life? Subject 17. I told you, it shows me things, and now it's showing me something about you, Dr. Weiss, about your daughter. Dr. Weiss, that's enough. I think this is over. Subject 17, she's in danger. The man she's dating? He's not who she thinks he is. He has a history of violence, previous girlfriends in other states. He's careful, changes his name when he moves, but it's always the same pattern. Dr. Weiss, this session is over. Subject 17, check his background, please, before it's too late. And this is where the recording ended. Nathan sat back, his coffee forgotten. The next page was a handwritten note from Dr. Weiss, dated 2 weeks later. Personal note. I've done something unethical. After our last session, I hired a private investigator to look into James Mercer, The man my daughter Rebecca has been seeing for the past 6 months. The investigator found that Mercer has used 3 different names in the past decade. Under his previous identity, he was investigated for the disappearance of a girlfriend in Colorado, though charges were never filed due to lack of evidence. I've shown Rebecca the report. She was angry at first, but has agreed to end the relationship. I've also convinced her to stay with me for a while, just to be safe. How could Subject 17 have known any of this? I've reviewed all possible explanations. He could have researched my personal life, perhaps even followed my daughter, but the timing doesn't make sense. He mentioned Mercer's violent history before the investigator uncovered it. I'm continuing the sessions, but off the record. Whatever is happening here goes beyond sleep disorders. I need to understand what he's connecting with during these threshold states. The note ended there. Nathan flipped to the next page, but there was nothing more about Subject 17. The remaining documents were administrative memos about the project's termination in November 1977, citing ethical concerns and methodological issues, but offering no specifics. He was about to put the tablet down when a new email notification appeared. It was from Marissa Chen, sent just minutes ago. I found something else you might be interested in. There's a box of personal effects that belonged to Dr. Weiss in deep storage, never cataloged properly. Includes what looks like private research journals. If you want to see them, come by tomorrow morning before the archives officially open, 8 a.m. sharp. That night, as he lay in bed, Nathan found himself unusually aware of the shadows in the corners of his bedroom. The space between the closet door and the wall seemed darker than it should be. As his eyelids grew heavy, he caught himself straining to hear any unusual sounds, half expecting a cold breath on his face. Don't be ridiculous, he told himself. Reading about sleep paralysis was making him suggestible. He turned onto his side, facing away from the darkest corner, and eventually drifted off. He dreamed of corridors, endless and dimly lit. He was searching for something, opening door after door, each revealing empty rooms with peeling wallpaper and bare light bulbs. In the dream, he knew he was being followed, could feel eyes on the back of his neck. But whenever he turned, the corridor behind him was empty. Until it wasn't. In the dream, Nathan turned one final time and saw a figure standing at the far end of the hallway. It was tall and thin, its proportions slightly wrong, as if it had been stretched. Its face was in shadow, but Nathan could feel it looking at him, studying him. "Who are you?" Nathan called out, his voice echoing strangely. The figure didn't move, but somehow it was suddenly closer, though Nathan hadn't seen it take a step. "What do you want?" Nathan asked, backing away. The figure tilted its head, an oddly bird-like motion. When it spoke, its voice was like dry leaves rustling. "You've been looking for me," it said. "In the archives. In the old records." "Subject 17?" Nathan whispered. The figure made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That was just a number they gave me. A label. I've had many names, many vessels. He was just one of them." "What are you?" Nathan asked, his back now pressed against a wall that hadn't been there before. "A traveler," the figure said. "A guide. I exist in the spaces between the threshold states, where reality thins." It was even closer now, close enough that Nathan should have been able to see its face, but the shadows seemed to cling to it, moving and shifting like smoke. "Why are you here in my dream?" "Because you called me," the figure said. with your curiosity, your questions, your desire to know what happened. It leaned forward, and Nathan felt that cold breath on his face. Do you still want to know? Nathan woke with a gasp, his heart hammering. The room was dark, but morning light edged around his curtains. He fumbled for his phone. 7:30 a.m. He needed to get to the archives in 30 minutes. As he rushed through his morning routine, Nathan tried to dismiss the dream. Stress and suggestion. That's all it was. His subconscious processing the transcripts he'd read. But he couldn't shake the lingering unease, the feeling that the conversation had been real in some way he couldn't articulate. Marissa was already at the archives, a cardboard box on the desk in front of her. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Are you okay? Nathan asked as he approached. She gave a weak smile. Didn't sleep well. Bad dreams. She pushed the box toward him. Here's what I found. It was in a storage closet that hasn't been properly sorted since the department reorganization in the 80s. Dr. Weiss's personal effects, including what looks like research journals. Nathan opened the box carefully. Inside, there were several leather-bound notebooks, a folder of loose papers, and a small tape recorder, the old-fashioned kind that used cassettes. A single tape was still inside it. Have you looked through these? He asked. Marissa shook her head, just enough to confirm that they were related to the Somnus project. I figured you'd want to be the first to really examine them. She hesitated, but after what you said yesterday, I did ask my mother about Subject 17. She said my grandmother would never talk about it directly, but once, after too much wine at Thanksgiving, she mentioned that the thing that came through him was still out there, looking for a new way in. Back in his apartment, Nathan spread the contents of the box across his desk. He started with the journals, opening the one with the earliest dates. Dr. Weiss's handwriting was small and precise, detailing the initial setup of the Somnus project and her hypothesis about threshold consciousness. The early entries were purely scientific, but as Nathan progressed through the journals, he noticed a shift in Dr. Weiss. Her tone became increasingly focused on Subject 17, documenting their official sessions, but also additional meetings not reflected in the university records. She began to question her own understanding of consciousness and reality. October 17th, 1977. I verified 3 more of Subject 17's predictions. Events he could not possibly have known about through conventional means. I'm forced to consider explanations outside our current scientific framework. Is he accessing some form of precognition during these threshold states, or is his claim more literal, that he's communicating with some external entity that exists in this liminal space? October 25th, 1977. Subject 17 described my childhood home today in perfect detail, down to the pattern of the wallpaper in my bedroom and the view from my window. He says it showed him that it can access memories, both mine and his, when they're in contact during the threshold state. I asked what it wants. He said to experience, to know, to be. November 3rd, 1977. Subject 17 missed our appointment. When I called his home, his roommate said he hasn't been seen in 2 days. I'm concerned. His last session was troubling. He spoke of thinning the barrier permanently and letting it through completely. I've notified campus security, but I'm not sure what to tell them. That I fear my research subject has been influenced by some entity he contacts while falling asleep. They'd think I'd lost my mind. The final entry was dated November 10th, 1977. They found subject 17 last night in his apartment in bed. The official cause of death will likely be heart failure, but the responding officer, a former student of mine, called me directly. He said subject 17's eyes were open, his expression one of absolute terror, and the room was cold, far colder than it should have been with the heating on. I'm shutting down the project, destroying the official records. What we've stumbled upon here isn't something that should be pursued further. Some doors once opened can't be closed again, and I fear that whatever came through Subject 17 is still here, looking for a new threshold to cross. If anyone finds these notes in the future, be warned. Don't go looking for it. Don't call to it with your curiosity. Above all, don't let yourself become aware of it in those moments between wakefulness and sleep. Awareness is invitation. Nathan sat back, a cold weight settling in his stomach. The warning felt directed at him personally, across the decades. He glanced at the tape recorder, the final item from the box he hadn't yet examined. His hand hesitated over it. Did he really want to hear what was on that tape? Before he could decide, his phone rang, startling him. It was Marissa. "Hey," he answered. "I was just going through Dr. Weiss's journals. They're incredible, but—" Marissa interrupted. "Did you have strange dreams last night?" she said, her voice tense. Nathan froze. "Why do you ask?" "Because I did. After talking to you about the Somnus project, I dreamed about corridors and doors and something following me. Something that said it was looking for a way in." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And it knew my name, Nathan. It knew things about me no one could know." Nathan's mouth went dry. "Marissa, and then this morning I found this." Her voice shook slightly. "I woke up with a mark on my wrist, like a small circle, a curved line. It wasn't there when I went to bed." Nathan looked down at his own wrist and felt the blood drain from his face. There, just below his palm, was a small circle-shaped mark, like a thin red line drawn with a fine-tipped pen. "Nathan, are you there?" "Don't fall asleep," he said suddenly, urgently. "The journals. Dr. Weiss wrote that awareness of it during the threshold state is an invitation. We've both been thinking about it, researching it. We've made ourselves aware." "What are you saying?" Marissa asked, but he could hear the fear in her voice. She'd already guessed. I think we've drawn its attention, whatever it is, and I think it's trying to come through us." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, "What do we do?" Nathan looked at the tape recorder. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Can you come over? I don't think either of us should be alone right now." After hanging up, Nathan stared at the tape recorder for a long moment. Then, with a deep breath, he pressed play. The tape hissed with static at first, then cleared. A man's voice, presumably Subject 17, spoke in a monotone that didn't sound quite natural. "If you're listening to this, Dr. Weiss, then I've already gone. It's coming through tonight. I can feel the barrier thinning. I wanted to leave you this explanation, this warning." There was a pause, filled only with the sound of breathing. "It found me when I was a child, in that space between waking and sleeping. At first it just watched, then it spoke, then it showed me things. It's been patient, so patient, teaching me how to thin the barrier, how to let it cross over more fully. It needs a vessel, you see, a mind to anchor it in this reality." Another pause, longer this time. I thought I could control it, use its knowledge, its ability to see beyond the normal constraints of time and space, but it's been using me all along, preparing me, and now it's ready. The voice changed then, becoming somehow deeper and yet more hollow. She won't hear this recording, Vessel, but the others will eventually. Curious minds like yours, they'll come asking the same questions, wondering what happened to you. And in wondering and becoming aware, they'll open their own doors. A sound like dry laughter. I exist in the spaces between the threshold states. I'm ancient and patient. And now, thanks to your research, more will know of me, more will dream of me, and more doors will open. The tape clicked off. Nathan sat motionless, the implications watching over him like ice water. He and Marissa had both dreamed of corridors and doors, both woken with the same mark, both became aware of whatever entity had spoken through Subject 17. His phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. On my way, don't fall asleep. Nathan looked at the final journal entry again. Dr. Weiss had written that awareness in the threshold state was invitation. They had both already dreamed it, already become aware. Was it too late? He thought of the figure in his dream, how it had said he had called to it with his curiosity, how it had asked if he still wanted to know what happened. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet, the corners too dark, despite the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. Nathan stood up, needing to move, to shake off the growing dread. As he did, he caught sight of his reflection in the window glass. For just a moment, so brief he might have imagined it, he saw something standing behind him, a tall, thin figure with proportions slightly wrong, as if stretched. A sharp knock at the door made him jump. Marissa. He hurried to let her in, trying to ignore the feeling that something else had arrived with her, slipping in through the threshold between the hallway and apartment, between awareness and belief. Some doors once opened can't be closed again, and Nathan couldn't shake the certainty that he and Marissa had just opened theirs. Well, Spookies, I hope you enjoyed these stories, and I wish you a very restful sleep. Until next time, bye-bye.